What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to Coffee and conversation number two. So definitely looking forward to getting into this conversation about building yourself back up through um, through what you've been through when it comes to mental health. So definitely looking forward to this conversation and us talking about what you can actually do to build yourself back up. So come on in, like, share, be a part of this great podcast. All right. So again, season one, conversation two, definitely happy. It's going to be a good conversation. All right. So before we get into the conversation, all right. So the Java of the day. So last week, I didn't really get to do the coffee that I was drinking. So I'll show that first, and then I'll show you what I'm drinking today. I'm a big coffee drinker. So that was part of why I came up with coffee and conversation, having a cup of Joe and having a conversation. Um, so last week I was drinking the coffees. It's called Around the World and 12 Coffees, and I actually got this from Amazon. And so I was drinking um, the Honduras coffee. So it was definitely a good coffee to drink. So just to let you all know, the coffee that I was drinking on last week, but this week the Java cup coffee of the day is from Black. Let me make sure that I'm saying that right. Black Lock Coffee Bar. It's called Ice Caramel Blondie. I tasted it; it's good. So if you're in the Dallas area, go ahead and go and get it. I definitely enjoyed it. Definitely enjoyed um, drinking the coffee. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Again, like, share, bring in people for this conversation about building yourself back up when it comes to mental health and anything dealing with any mental illness that you have. All right. So last week I talked about, and I basically was vulnerable, and I made myself to be put out there to talk about what I experienced when it came to mental health, when it came to just dealing with how what I went through, and navigating through that, um, and understanding, hey, that mental health is something that is not talked about enough, and I wanted to be able to talk about it because it's not talked about in the community. It's not talked about amongst people because it's a stigma on it, and so I wanted to break that stigma. If you look, I think one of the things that they have out there this year is break the stigma. Again, we are in mental health awareness month, so it's talking about breaking the stigma. So let's break the stigma when it comes to mental health. So this week, conversation number two, talking about building yourself up. So let's dive right into the conversation. So when I started talking about last week about everything that I went through, mental health wise, and started from I look at starting from the whole thing with my dad when I was young, and going through that process. And as I got older, trying to find me and who I was. And as I went in the military and the stuff happened in 2015 and my mom passed, it was the understanding, when I started looking at all of that, I was like, okay, like I said last week, I started to drop and I started to feel like I had hit rock bottom. And so 2019 came around and I started to hit rock bottom again. And so the question that a lot of people, you know, might ask or might wonder, like, how did you build yourself back up? How did you get from a point of rock bottom, you almost out of here? I had a plan twice to just end it to where I am now. And so I'll tell you this, um, recovery, building yourself back up is not easy. However, each one of us can do it. But the thing is, how do we do it? How do we build ourselves back up to a point to where we say to ourselves that um, I need to get better. I need to get to a point to where I'm not letting this overtake my life. And that's what happened to me. I was letting this overtake my life to where it was like, man, I like I said, when I found out about my mom and I came back to Dallas after the funeral and all that, I literally was a zombie, and I just didn't know where to go from there. And fast forward 2019, same thing. I didn't know how to pick up the pieces and move on. I was stuck. And that's what happens with a lot of people um when it comes to mental health. That's what happened with me. I was stuck. I was stuck in a place to where I was just like, okay, how do I get myself out of this? How do I stop feeling the way that I feel? How do I want to be able to just wake up one day not depressed, not sad at the world, not just not wanting to be here? And it happened as I was thinking about this conversation and I was thinking about it real deeply. I started to think back to when I went to church. And I remember in 2016, I was like, man, like, okay, I'm going to this church, never heard of the pastor. And I went to this church and I remember seeing this guy, one of the pastors, and I was like, man, I know that dude because he had a viral video going across Facebook. It was a great message. I had to go back through my Facebook and find it and resend it out, but it was a great message and it helped me see something different. And so going to the church, and I was just like, okay, sat down, and for me, I want to say this, um, as you hear this and we have this conversation, there's going to be a transformation you're going to see. So I started in the back when I first joined this church. Started in the back, and you're going to see the transformation of how I made it to the front. Again, it was the process of building myself back up. So I sat in the back of the church. What the first Sunday I went there, and I was like, okay. And he actually preached that Sunday, and I was like, okay, man, this is good. So I was like, okay, God, this is where I'm supposed to be planted, and it moved on from there. That was 2016. So as things went on, I remember 2018 when I got the news about my dad and he passed. And I remember we had two services. This was pre-COVID. Had two services going on, and I was just like, okay. My brother called me first service and said that dad had passed, and I was like, okay, how do I feel? Because again, I was trying to mend and build something back up with my dad. So at that time, I had told my youth director, and I think by that time, my pastor and other leadership had known in the church, and I was like, Kevin, go home. And the other servant leaders that were serving me, Kevin, go home. And I was like, I can't go home. Like, why would I go home and I still have a job to do? Remember, I said last week, when you're going through something, it is amazing that you can be able to help somebody else while you're going through. That is part of building yourself back up, being able to heal because you're helping somebody and God is placing somebody in your path. And so I was going through all that, and I was like, okay, okay, okay. So next thing I know, um, I I said to myself, okay, you know, when I was thinking about all of this, and I realized that um, my dad was gone, I was like, okay, what do I do now? So again, I stayed and I was working with the kids, and it was that second service. I didn't think nothing about that my dad had passed. Why? Because I still had something to do. I still had a job to do, and these kids needed to see me, and not see what I was going through. And I can tell you that it was definitely hard, but at the same time, it was rewarding to know that at the end of the day, I was able to teach kids something. But one of the things that I want you all to know when it comes to mental health, and one of the things that I realized as I started going through this process is people do not see you. So, and I'm gonna clarify this more and break it down. So when people look at you, they see you, but they really don't see you. So what do you mean by that, Kevin? So what I mean is, okay, I can look at a person. So a person can look at me and say, "Well, yeah, I know Kevin," but do they really know me? Do they really know, you know, if I say this or say that, then oh no, he's not good. So I'll give you an example. So when I was stationed in North Dakota, and I had my therapist, and I told you all about this last week. One of the things that I said when someone asked me, "Was I okay?" I said, "I'm good," and I kept saying that. That was a defense mechanism for me to basically tell people, "Leave me alone. I'm good. I don't want to talk to you. Whatever. I ain't trust you. I don't want nothing to do with you." And so, but the thing is, my therapist recognized that, and she recognized it to the point to where I was just like, wow. She recognized something that it took 30 something years for somebody to finally recognize something that I had been using for so long. But it took her to make me realize that I couldn't do that. And so I had to learn how to talk to people, how to open up. Again, when you go through so much hurt and so much pain and so many trust issues, you begin to build a wall. And the thing is, for me, is people did not see me. And so the thing that I ask you is, you going through mental health, do people see you? Do people know? Do people notice? Or do they just pass by? But the thing is, when you understand a person and you see a person for who they are, and you understand that a person can smile but be hurting on the inside. I remember a comment I read last week. Someone said, "You never know what a person is going through." You don't. And the thing is, people can mask it very well. I'm a person, I wear my emotions on my shoulder. Most people who know me know that I do that. And so the thing is, it's one of those things I was just like, okay, how do I um, get from this point of not masking myself? So to build myself back up, I had to uncover and take the mask off. Again, I'm going to say that again. You have to uncover, take the mask off, and be able to let the world see you. And I'm not saying, so let me stop and say this. I'm not saying, oh well, I'm gonna tell my business to everybody, because remember I said I have trust issues. But the thing is to let people who are in your immediate circle, people that you can trust, people that you know can be there for you in time of need. Those are the people who need to see you and not see a version of you, because that version of you is going to let them think that you're okay. But the thing is, when they see the real version of you, they start to see who you truly are. They start to see that you are hurting. They start to notice, and they start to say, "I'm going to be there for you." And so when all this happened, again, going back to Um, when my dad passed, I remember going to my pastor's office, and I remember um, her husband, our bishop, and some other pastors just praying for me. And I remember at that moment, I was like, man, my church family could have done anything else, but for them to come and pray with me, for them to be there in my time of need, it was so rewarding, and it made me realize one thing. um not really realize it, but understanding more and more. That saying, blood is thicker than water, and your family, your blood doesn't have to be, I mean, well, you know what I'm saying. So as far as with the family, when it comes to your blood family is not always blood. And so I started to realize that more and more with my church, because they were just there and have been there through everything. They went. I mean, I joined the church after my mom passed, but when when my dad passed, all the times that I ended up in the cycle ward, they were there. They didn't judge. They looked at me and they saw me. But I had to realize, and this is what I'll say to you all: can you realize who you are? Can you look at yourself and say, "This is me. This is not a version of me, but this is me. This is who I am. I have PTSD. I have bipolar. Whatever it is that you're dealing with on a mental health level, can someone look at you and see you and still want to be with you in spite of, still want to be there for you in spite of?" And so the church began to build me back up. My church, began to help me recover, to a point to where it was tough love, but it was needed love. It was love that I needed at the time, because I remember every time, like when I got the news about my mom, I had to come back to an empty place. When I got the news about my father, I had I had my church family, but I had to come back to an empty home. And so I remember one of my boys told me a long time ago. He said, "You know, I always worry about you because I don't know if tomorrow will be the last day that I talk to you, or today will be the last day I talk to you, because you live alone." And I thought so much about that, and it resonated with me, because no one ever said that to me. But I had to realize that, yes, I could be gone at any time. But how do I take myself and build myself back up and change my mindset? And that's the thing that I'll speak more on, because there's so many people, when you get into something, it's so hard to stay stuck in that situation, or stuck in somebody passing, and it's hard. Trust me, I know. Grief is hard. Dealing with grief is hard. Dealing with people passing is hard. How do you take yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, and progress and move on? It's not an easy path, is not easy to do, but it can be done. I want to read this. It was something that I pulled up. Again, I'm big on mental health. I'm big on understanding mental health, and so I found this thing, recovery. Recovery in mental health is a process of change that involves gaining and retaining hope, understanding one's abilities and disabilities, engaging in an active and meaningful life, and achieving social and emotional well-being. And I have to say this: recovery does not necessarily mean cure or no longer having symptoms. I have to say that again. Recovery does not necessarily mean that you're cured or no longer having symptoms. And so that's the thing that we have to understand. And I say we because I want everyone to understand, most of us have some type of mental issue that we faced in the past or we're going through now. And so the thing that I'll tell you is understanding that when you look at um, when you look at recovering from what you're going through, and you ask yourself, how do I still get up every morning and do my regular routine? How do I still get up and want to get out the bed? I'm telling you, when stuff happened with my mom, I didn't want to get out the bed. I just said I don't care what happens to me, because I felt like I had lost something, and I did. Now, did I treat my mom with the respect that she needed? No. And it was hard because I knew that I didn't treat my mom well. And so as I got older, I had to realize, because I was a daddy's boy, I had to realize that the one that was sticking there by me, I was treating wrong. And so, again, all this I'm dealing with, how do I build myself back up, dealing with all those thoughts? And so, the thing is, when you talk about recovery, it's one of those things that we have to understand. We have to understand that it's not saying that, oh, I'm automatically cured. No, but you're in a better place. You're in a place of you're able to think without clouds going through your mind, like you have a cloudy judgment, but you're able to think more for yourself. You're able to do more. You're willing to do more than just to sit in it. The thing that I've heard people say to me, Kevin, you can't sit in your mess. You have to be able to get out of your mess, which you take this mess and you throw it over here, you throw it over here, you throw it out. Because the longer you sit in your mess, more mess will pile on top of that mess. And so the more that you have mess coming on you, the more it's going to bring you down. And the thing is, how can you build yourself back up when you have so much mess already bringing you down? And so I had to really understand that. And I had to take that and I had to really sit back and think about it. I'm telling you, when you build yourself back up, it's not easy, because you have to face yourself and you have to see yourself. No one can see you for you than you, but you have to be willing to take the necessary steps to say, I know that I'm dealing with this. I know that this does not define who I am. This is something that I'm going through. This is something that I'm dealing with. This is something that I'm faced with, in spite of a loss, in spite of whatever you're going through. The doctor can say, well, you have this. But the thing is, when you start believing in who you are, and you start to recognize that what man says is not truth, but what God says, and understanding that no matter what you go through, that you have to be able to see who you are, and you have to know who you are. And it's hard for me sometimes. I'm not even going to sit here and again, I'm gonna be transparent with you throughout this season, throughout the show. I want to be transparent to help you understand that you have to be real with yourself and say, okay, I got a problem. Step one. Two, how do I deal with that problem? Because if you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. And you can't build yourself back up because you're still dealing with the problem. We deal with so much. If you have kids, if you're dealing with relationships, anything can happen. Life happens. But the thing is, when it comes to mental health, how can you build yourself up to a point to where you're saying to yourself, okay, I got it. I can make it from here. But you have to believe that. You can't tell yourself, I got it, but you don't believe because you're not making the necessary moves. So when the whole thing happened with my dad, and again going through that process and understanding that, um, and I remember that was 2018, and fast forward 2019, and I went through, and I was talking about, I went to the cabin, and I ended up, wanting to, I tried to commit suicide. I had a plan, all of that. And so later that year, I was fortunate to be able to join a military fraternity. And it was, again, 2019, I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with the world. I'm done with everything. I remember at the end of 2019, I was introduced to my military frat. I remember like saying, let's see where this goes. I was, it was a new fraternity starting. They had just were founded that year, and they had just started, just completed their alpha line was, I think, about to cross, and so I was on the beta line, and I remember going through the interview, being the first person on there, just waiting, and I remember in 2020 when I crossed, and it was so much going on, and I just said, okay, what's going to happen in 2020? There's going to be different. And I remember as I went through it and I crossed, I stepped to the side and I cried. I cried because of this. Throughout the whole time I was going through the process, I learned so much about myself. I learned about the true meaning of brotherhood. I learned that there are people who are in your corner that are not there with different motives. And I learned that that was a place to be able to build myself back up. So I say this to you all: when it comes to building yourself up, find something that you resonate with. Find an organization. It can be church. It can be, um, a nonprofit organization. Something that helps you get to where you need to be. I'm telling you. So you never know like-minded individuals that can help you through your process. That's what I had to learn too. I had to learn to be able to trust somebody, to be able to open up, to be able to build myself back up. And so when I did that through being in this frat, it has helped me tremendously. I went through right after we crossed, the pandemic happened, so it was shut down. You know, the world just shut down, and so I remember going through, and I remember it being hard because I was like, man, like this, I didn't expect this. So I started to open up to one of our founders and started to tell him my story. And pretty soon after that, I was able to open up to another one of my founders. And I began to start seeing that a brotherhood and family, again, I look at it and I say, man, my frat saved me. Um, sorry. Uh, I get emotional every time I talk about this because if it wasn't, if it wasn't for my frat, if it wasn't for my church, I don't know where I would be today. And so I'm thankful for them. I'm thankful for them being there when I needed it the most. Sometimes we don't know what we need until God places those people in your life. And you never understand why these people come in your life, but they're there because God already placed them in your life. And so when I think about and I look back on where I am today versus where I was 4 years ago in 2019, and when I think about it, it's like, man, it's been 4 years already. since I had probably the worst meltdown ever um, back in 2019. But it was like a glimpse God was showing me of I'm about to build you back up so you can be able to help others. And so we have to acknowledge, we have to pay attention to signs that are given. Don't push somebody out because they don't fit in with the status quo. Don't shun away from when someone says, I have a problem. Talk to them because you can be the life saving grace for some people. Um, Man, this is, I thought last week was gonna be emotional. This is emotional for me because I told my founders and I remember just telling them, man, this saved me. So for 2 years, 20 2020, 2021, um, I didn't life was good. Did I have problems here and there? Yes, but life was good. I had nothing. Church was going good. I was enjoying working with our teams. I was seeing our teams grow, and God, I was seeing all of this. I was seeing people come into our frat. I was helping with that, and I relapsed. When I say relapsed, I had a situation last year to where I said, "Man, I wanted to end my life." But I was able to recognize it and I was able to talk to someone in my frat and in my church to where it quickly was a in and out thing for me. So I recognized that there was a change. And so 2019, I also went through this thing of saying, okay, I God had called me to be a minister, and I said, okay, I don't know if I need to be a minister because I'm going through all this stuff. And I remember one of the pastors telling me in my church, he said, listen, you have been called. This is where you are planted. And so 2020, I went through and I graduated um, from well, I went through 2020 and I remember going through the process in 2021. I actually graduated, became a licensed minister, and I remember when I went through that, I was just like, man, this is another moment for me to understand that I belong here. But the thing is, like I said before, you have to believe it. I never the thing about us as people, we critique ourselves harder than others. So if someone says, I see greatness in you, and you say, I don't see it, you have to see it. They can tell you all day long, I see greatness in you. I see you doing good things. I see this, I see that. But if you don't believe it, nobody else will. And I had to learn that. One of my founders, he tells me all the time, I can tell you all day this and that, but it's up to you to believe it. It's up to you to actually sit down and say to yourself, I believe what he said. I truly believe that I'm a dope dude. I believe that I can do this. And so when you look at building yourself back up, you have to one get away from all the naysayers. And I brought some things, you know, to help and understand that um, is when it talks about getting help when you need it, and that's the thing, getting help when you need it. A lot of us recognize it, but we don't get the help that we need. A lot of us say to ourselves, "Okay, I know I need the help, but I don't want to see. I don't want nobody to know my business. I don't want to talk to no therapist. What is he or she gonna do for me?" So, and I remember I was like, when I was in North Dakota, I didn't want to talk to nobody. I literally told them, I said, I have to talk to a civilian therapist. I don't want to talk to no military therapist because I worked in the hospital. So I didn't want anyone to know my business. I was and still am a private person. So I had to be able to say to myself, you have to make the first step. You have to trust somebody. And so I challenge each of you all who's watching and who will watch this and who will share this is if you're dealing with something, if you have someone that you know that is dealing with any type of depression or anything, the thing, one, they have to recognize it. Two, if you recognize it, talk to them. Because the thing is, sometimes they don't want to recognize it for themselves and they are waiting for someone to come to them and say, "Hey, man, like I've noticed that you haven't been yourself. I've noticed that you stopped coming out to work out. I noticed that you stopped playing basketball. I noticed that you don't dress the same way that you used to dress. I noticed that you don't come to church like you used." Like when you start noticing those things because you see them not as this version or that version, but you see them for who they truly are. And you know that they've taken, and you can take the mask off of them, and they're not covered, but they're showing them true selves to you to be able to know who you are. And so you have to be able to know when you need to get help. One of the other things, surround yourself with good people. Like I said, my church family and my frat family helped me when I was in a time of need, when I was in a time of saying to myself, man, like what do I do? And I'm still learning. It is not an overnight process. I'm still learning how to trust. I'm still learning how to open up because I've never done that. I've always closed myself off because I got hurt before. I've been hurt before. And so, and you don't want everybody to know that you have issues because the stigma, again, I'm trying to break it. And I hope that this reaches as many people as it can. But if it reaches one, I'm happy that it reached that one to be able to help someone understand. We have to break this stigma of saying, if you have a mental health problem, you crazy, I don't want to deal with you, I don't want to be bothered with you. And that makes that person shut down, close down, because they are already looked at society and judged before you even get to know what they've been through. A person can go through so much and you won't even know because you don't take the time to sit down and have a conversation like we're having now. And so you have to understand that it's not easy to sit and say, I have a problem. It's not easy to say, I have PTSD or I'm bipolar because who wants to admit that? Who wants someone to tell them or someone to look at them and say, oh, well, you are crazy or you have a problem or this or that. And so the thing is, understanding that at the end of the day, no matter what, you have to say, how can I start building myself up? It's like a house. The foundation is to recognize the problem. And then the thing is, in that you're going up a level. A house, you can a building. I'll use a building. You're going up these stairs. The thing is, we get stuck on the floor and we can go through the stairwell, we can go up one flight of stairs, and then we get stuck in the middle before we reach that second to get to the second floor. Why? Because we have people coming from different directions. We have so many things that get to us that bring us back down. And we let people, I'm saying we because I still do it and I'm still working on it, and God is still working with me, but we let people dictate how we're supposed to act. We let people take us to a point to where we build ourselves and bring ourselves back down. Now we're stuck. How do I get unstuck from being stuck and having so much being told to me. Words, when you throw words at yourself, you're throwing words and you're saying to yourself, man, okay, okay, this is this is being said to me. And once you get so many words thrown at you, you're asking yourself, is that true? And you start believing yourself what people are saying. But people don't know because they don't know your story. But when people start to realize and start to understand that you've been through something, that you have been through so much, they'll start to recognize. Now, the other thing that I recognize too, some of the strongest people are some of the people that's hurting the most. Again, you mask because you don't want nobody to know. And I get it because again, it took me 40 something years to get to this point of being able to open myself up to what I'm doing now. But the thing is, it's so many people that hurt, but you use defense mechanisms. Like I said, I use the word good, and people who know me probably like, oh yeah, I use the word good a lot. Somebody say, hey, Kevin, how you doing? I'm good, but nobody caught on because they'll be like, oh, okay, well, I'll just leave it alone. But no, I wanted you to go further. So the thing is, it's a wall. On this side, I'm what I want everyone to see. On this side, I want someone to climb over to be able to really see who I am and be able to start to pull out stuff that nobody else has been able to pull out. And so the thing is, when you have a wall, and on one side, you are a version, not yourself, but a different version of what you want people to see, but then on the other side is the version that people need to see, but you don't want everyone to see it. And so what you do, you close yourself off, you isolate yourself. When things happen in your life, you isolate yourself. You don't want to be around nobody, and that happens. That's just a natural thing that we do. We isolate ourselves. I do it a lot. I isolate myself from the world. I don't want to be with nobody. I don't want to be bothered. Why? Because I'm just like, why do I want to sit up here and talk about my problems with you? If you never been through what I've been through, why am I sitting up here talking to you? So I isolate myself, I go off, and then I come back when I'm ready. Sometimes that's okay, but the thing is, you can't stay stuck in that isolation because the longer you're stuck, the longer the words and your thoughts will start to catch up with you, and now you're thinking, man, such and such said this, and now I'm starting to believe what such and such said, because now you have time to think because you isolate yourself from people and you isolate yourself from the world. So now you're thinking, you're saying to yourself, okay, now I got a problem. So now I'm thinking, oh man, they said that I was crazy. Am I really crazy? And so now you start to speak words into yourself that are not even true. But now you don't even know what to do because now you're saying to yourself, man, that must be true. But do they really know the real you? Or do they just know a version of you? So ask yourself, how do I build myself back up through the hurts, the pain, the tears, not wanting to get out of bed, not wanting to go to work. And depression, if you don't catch it, can lead to other things. If you don't understand depression, really take the time to understand it because people start to do things that show you that they're depressed. If you go into a person's home and they just have stuff everywhere, and you know that they're a clean person, and then next thing you know, you walk in their house and they have stuff everywhere, and they're just living and they have dishes and everything, they're depressed. But then they'll come up and say, "Oh no, I just got to clean up," or this. They're using excuses to be able to knock you out to where you are saying, "Oh well, I'm not going to worry about it." They say it's just a one time thing, and you probably will be back over their house or whatever to later. No, we have to get to a point to where we say to ourselves, "I'm going to check on you. I don't care if you get mad. One of my founders says this to me all the time. I'm going to tell you what you probably don't want to hear, and it's okay. But I care about you enough to do it. My brother says the same thing to me. I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'm going to say what I need to say and be real. That's the thing about it. We have people that can't be real with you. One of the things I always tell people, listen, yes, I wear my emotions on my shoulder. Not even gonna lie, not even gonna, I'm transparent. But the thing is, I appreciate someone who can come to me and say, Kevin, I don't like you. Okay, let's have a conversation. Kevin, this or that, I don't like the way you talk to me. Okay, let's have a conversation. The thing is, we have to start having more dialogue than texting or doing other things that don't even make it something that just doesn't make sense to trying to help with the situation. So building yourself back up is not easy. Recovery is not easy. Um, I'll go on to some of the things, something that I read. It says that the first step in the journey to recovery begins with a decision that life must improve. You have to understand that your life, you would have to want your life to improve. If you don't want your life to improve, then your life will stay stagnant to where it's at. The other thing is, it says the pain of mental illness, uh, um, coupled with such losses, can be overwhelming. Yet, at some point, we find the determination to stop just surviving and start gaining back life, piece by piece. That is when recovery begins. Again, I'm going to read this again. Yet, at some point, we find the determination. So you have to find, I had to find the determination, and the determination came when I was sitting in a psych ward and I said to myself, there has to be better for me than this. There has to be more to life than this. There has to be something out there that I'm supposed to be doing than sitting in a psych ward going through the everyday of something's wrong with me and believing that. And so when I found the willingness to want to live and the determination to understand that I wanted to live, that's when I gained back control of my life. That's when I regained the willingness to want to live again versus wanting to die. So you have to be able to find that determination to want to live again. And the other piece, it says gaining back life piece by piece. Again, it's step by step. It is, this is not a marathon. This is not a race. So one person, their mental health, they might be through with it in 2 years. Another person might take 10. Don't judge a person because of the length that it takes them, but be there to encourage, be there to help, be there to pour into them. I'm going to say this. You cannot pour into someone if you yourself have nothing to pour into them. Now, you can say, hey, I want to be there for you, um, and you can be, but don't give them all these words, and then you yourself are not following the same thing. You can't do that, but it takes time. Like I said last week, um, when it comes to grief, 1 to 5 years for one person. So again, I had three people pass within a 3 year period. So you're talking about max 15 years from 2015. You're talking about 2030. All right. But I don't put time on grief. Grief is when you start to take control and you start to actually look at your life and say, I'm grieving and it's okay. And now I need to find out how to deal with that grief. So understanding that, we got a few more and then I'm gonna end today's conversation. But once it was thought that this plateau of stability was as far as people with mental illness could go, maintaining stability was the goal of treatment. But today we understand that much more is possible. So the last thing I'll leave you with is this word called hope. Finding hope. Finding hope in yourself to understand that there is hope for your life. There is hope. There is so much more in you, so much more that you can do, but you have to take the necessary steps. Somebody is hurting on today. Somebody is going through. Somebody just lost somebody. Somebody is in the hospital. Whatever you may be going through, find hope in something. I remember when I was going through with my mom passing, she first passed. I remember one of my brothers at the church. He always used to tell me, look at the memories, find the memories, the good memories, and hold on to those. At my church, we do this thing every December, um, night of hope, and it was that at that time when I was like, okay, that helped me in so many ways. And I told my pastor when I met her, I was like, man, like this is something that I needed to talk to you about and wanted to talk to you about, because how do you find hope when it seems like the clouds are following you each and every day? How do you find hope when you seem like every time you turn around, something's going on in your life? How do you find hope when your family's going through and you don't know what to do? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you that you find hope when you wake up each day. You find hope when you make the determination to tell yourself, I'm going to live today. Tomorrow, I don't know what tomorrow is going to be, but I'm going to live today, and I'm going to take day by day. And I'm going to look and I'm going to say to myself, I have to make the determination to take it step by step, by step, by step, and understand that this is where I want to be. This is where I want to go. And to find that hope. Is it easy? No. Can it happen? Yes. I'm a living witness. I'm still building and I'm still climbing. And the thing is, you have to be willing to understand it's not a race. You have to be willing to understand that you're going to hit a plateau. You're going to hit some stumbling blocks, but that's okay. It's saying I'm moving in the right direction and I'm moving myself to a point to where I'm understanding that I am able to get out of this mess and I'm able to take this off and I'm able to unmask myself and I'm able to show the world the version, not different versions, but the true version of who I am, because I have hope in the world. I have hope in myself. I have hope that I will get better, because this mental illness does not define who I am. It's just something that I have, and I have to be able to learn to live with it. So I thank you all. This has been, um, man, this has been definitely healing for me. I hope and I pray that you find something and something that I said on last week, on today, and that you continue to listen and you continue to work on yourself. It's an everyday thing to work on yourself, and so you have to be willing to do that. And so I'm so excited. That I'm going to start having guests in the future come up. So start looking for my advertisements for that. But I'm going to start having guests and having dialogue with people that's been through mental health. I'm gonna have a social worker on. I'm gonna have some veterans on. I'm gonna have people that's dealing with families. And the last episode, conversation number 8, is going to be a panel of different people, and let's talk about mental health as a whole, and let's break this stigma. So thank you for joining. I appreciate you. Have a good one. And remember, whether it is evening, afternoon, or even late at night, I'm sorry, whether it's morning, afternoon, or even late at night, a little cup of Joe in a conversation can always get you right. I am Kevin Smith. Have a good night.